Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie Bree. Before we get into the topic, I want to give you a couple of updates. Points of interest. Real quick. One, I'm still fighting a head cold, so I'm very stuffy. So I may be taking breaks to blow my nose. Also, my voice is a little unsavory at the moment. Not what I'm used to. I'm a little clogged up, and I'm high on Sudafed, so I may be a little rambly, more rambly than usual, as I try to string together coherent thoughts. Second thing I want to point out, and I want to address this because of some of the comments in my top 25 greatest wrestlers of all time. I have to be very fucking specific because some of you assholes, and I'm sorry for using that term, but some people called me out, and it's like you weren't fucking paying attention, or I didn't get into the specifics. So, I watched WWF from like when I was 7 years old till about the time I was 9 or 10 years old. So that's my childhood experience of WWF. So when I talked about the wrestlers I grew up with, air quotes, that was it. There were like not very many of them. That was my limited experience. By the time I was a teenager in the 90s, and I've talked about this in other videos, you can go back and watch those if you want me to give you the full goddamn timeline. Pisses me off when people don't pay attention to what I say. I watched WCW in the 90s. I wasn't watching WWF. And this is my top 25 WWE wrestlers of all time, not professional wrestlers of all time. So I'm not going to talk about people from the WCW days, because that's not what that video was. It was specific to WWF, which later became WWE, which is what this is. And I only watched WWF from like 7 years old to 9 years old. So I had very limited experience with it. Now, going back later in life, starting around 2018 when I got back into wrestling, after being out of it for over 20 years, I signed up for the WWE Network and went back and rewatched some of those old matches or pay-per-views or shows like Raw and Sunday Main Event or whatever the fuck the shows were called, and rediscovered some of the wrestlers that I maybe had vague or fuzzy memories of from my childhood that I learned about later in life. So I want to be very fucking clear about that. So I don't have a lot of nostalgia for some of these wrestlers. So when I did my top 25 WWE wrestlers of all time, yes, it was very heavily slanted towards the modern era because that's what I am familiar with. Yes, I watched some of it in my childhood and I have vague, fuzzy memories of some people. The ones who stood out in my memories are the ones I talked about in that video because they stood out in my memories. The wrestlers that you watched growing up as a kid, I didn't grow up with them. Either I didn't see them when I was watching WWF, or they didn't migrate to WCW when I did. So those weren't wrestlers I had experiences with as a kid. And going back and looking at some of them now as an adult rediscovering wrestling, I don't have nostalgia or an affinity for those wrestlers because I didn't know who they were. So now that I've got that out of the way, let's go ahead and give you my top 25 worst WWE wrestlers of all time, based pretty much on my previous experiences of rediscovering wrestlers from the past that I didn't grow up with, or what I remembered from my actual childhood. Most of it's going to be slanted towards modern day wrestlers, with a few retro wrestlers thrown in there for whatever reason. Number 25 is Charlotte Flair. I have the same issue with Charlotte Flair that, like, the vast majority of WWE fans have with Charlotte Flair. She's boring. She's disinteresting. And they're fucking pushing her so hard, I'm over it. I don't want to see her anymore. Fortunately, she's been kind of dormant this past year. But there was a period where It was the Charlotte Flair show. It was not Monday Night Raw or Friday Night SmackDown. Number 24 is Nikki ASH. Now, I love Nikki Glenclose, the performer who plays Nikki Cross. And Nikki Cross is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. And I don't care if you don't like her. I love her. And I don't care if they're not using her. That doesn't mean I don't like her just because they're not doing anything with her. That's not on her or me. That's fucking management's problem. But I didn't like when they rebranded her as a almost superhero when she was Nikki ASH. I didn't like that gimmick. And I was very happy to see that she got away from that gimmick, but also I'm still disappointed that they're not doing anything with her today. Number 23 is CM Punk. He's a douchebag. I don't like him. I don't want to see him. Number 22 is Macho King Randy Savage. Now, when he was Macho Man Randy Savage, which is what I remember from my childhood, mostly because that's what I saw when I was watching WWF, and he was a star on WCW. I grew up with him. But rediscovering and going back and looking at, the evolution of the character, once I got the WWE Network and went back in time and rewatched those shows I missed out on, I learned of the Macho King iteration of him, and I was not a fan of that iteration of Macho Man Randy Savage. Excuse me. Number 21 is another one who made my greatest wrestlers list previously in a different incarnation, but in this incarnation I was not impressed. I love The Undertaker. I hate American Badass. When he came back as American Badass, I was just like, nope, not interested, moving on. Number 20 came up in the comments, and look, I don't like him. Randy Orton, he irritates me. He's a dude bro. I don't like dude bros. He's boring. I like wrestlers who have colorful comic book characters or interesting gothic horror themed characters. I don't like dude bros running around in their panties smacking their pecs. It's like, I don't need to see that. I like The Miz because he dresses up in fancy outfits and he's entertaining, I don't like these dude bros. Randy Orton is your typical fucking boring ass dude bro. Put on a mask or put on a cape or, do some, witchcraft or something. I might be interested in you. But if you're just going to show up in your underwear and flex your muscles, yawn, I don't give a fuck. Number 19, they're growing on me, but not them as a tag team. It's the Usos. Now, you're going to find out as you watch my videos, I am not a fan of the Bloodline. And I do not like the Usos as a tag team. Now, I do like what they're doing with Jey Uso. I am still a little fishy on Jimmy Uso, but that's neither here nor there. But the number 19 spot goes to the Usos because as a tag team, I didn't care for the Usos because they were just the henchmen of the Bloodline. And I'm over the Bloodline. And I got over the Bloodline 5 minutes after they introduced the Bloodline. Number 18 is Iron Sheik. From my childhood, I remember him as the bad guy. And going back and rewatching some of those old pay-per-views and things, rediscovering wrestling, he was boring. I didn't like his character. Number 17 is the one who irritates me more than most. But he's not higher up on the list because he's just boring. He irritates me because he's boring. He's obnoxious and he runs his mouth. It's Austin Theory. Another boring-ass dude, bro, who the only thing he has going for him is being an asshole. Number 16 is Hollywood Hogan. Now, I'm breaking a rule here. Hollywood Hogan was WCW, not WWF, later WWE. But Hulk Hogan is WWF, later WWE. He's like the biggest name in wrestling. I didn't like him when he was Hollywood Hogan. That was the period where I was like, no thank you. Number 15 is the 1-2-3 Kid. Now, here's one I do not remember from my childhood. I rediscovered him, again, going back and watching the early episodes of Monday Night Raw, and he was boring. He was just like, he was arrogant and obnoxious, and I didn't like him. Number 14 is Yokozuna. I didn't like him because he was just a big dude, and his gimmick was boring. Number 13 is Otis. Again, a big dude. His gimmick is boring. Number 12, Bob Backlund. Another freaking dude bro. Boring. Give me something more interesting. So I'm skimming through the dude bros because I'm not going to say the same thing over and over again. Number 11 is Bailey. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit insight into how my crazy brain works. My neurodivergent brain. I don't like Bailey for two reasons. One, she runs her mouth. And I'm like, shut up. You just irritate me. But mostly, I don't like her hairdo. I just don't like the way she does her hair. It's just, I don't know. I just look at her and I'm like, please shut up. Or get a haircut. Or, I don't know. Whatever. So some of these are going to be like that, superficial. I'm going to admit to that. Because wrestling is a cartoon for me. It's a live-action comic book. I want it to be a live-action comic book. If you have a wrestler who is not a comic book character, villain, or hero, I'm not that interested in them. Number 10 is Big Boss Man. I have no quarrels with the character or the wrestler, but he has a fucking Confederate flag on his arm, and fuck you for that, dude. Fuck you for that. So that was never okay. Number 9 is Tatanka. Now again, this goes back to it's the 90s, colorful cartoon characters, blah, blah, blah. But my problem with Tatanka is it is a very offensive stereotype of Native Americans, and I know he, played the character well and did what he had as a performer had to do in that time to be successful. This is the character Tatanka I have a problem with, not the performer who played Tatanka. I want to make that very clear. Number 8 is Kevin Owens. I don't like him because he's another dude bro, but he's also kind of a prick, and I don't like it. Number 7 is X-Pac, which again is the same performer who plays the 1-2-3 Kid, but I do remember X-Pac from the WCW Attitude Era days, and I never liked him. Number 6 is Jerry the King Lawler. Now, as a character, he's mildly entertaining because, yeah, he dresses up like a king, and he talks fancy, but he's kind of a douche, and he doesn't do much. He never really wrestled that much when I was watching him. Number 5 is Seth freaking Rollins. I used to like Seth Rollins. Back when he used to dress up in fancy outfits and be flamboyant and come out and actually look like a colorful cartoon character. I lost a lot of respect for him and interest in him when he started dressing plain Jane shorts and a t-shirt or whatever and started doing the whole chanting thing, orchestrating the crowd. I'm not interested in that. You're full of yourself. Number 4 is Riddle. He's another dude bro, but he's the most offensive dude bro because he's a surfer dude, a stoner dude. Not interested. You're boring. Leave me alone. Number 3 is Goldberg. Now, Goldberg is one that is universally, largely hated or disliked or panned by WWE fans, so this one shouldn't be too controversial. But he's a one-trick pony. He struts out, does the spear, gets the 3 count, and then struts back to the locker room, and that's it. No thank you. And he's another damn dude bro. Number 2 is Sami Zayn. Now, as a entertainer, Sami Zayn is entertaining. And I know this is going to sound whatever. I don't care if you agree with me or believe me or whatever. But when I was introduced to Sami Zayn, he wore a lot of denim. And I hate denim. Denim is the most offensive fabric to my eyes and to the touch of my skin. I can't stand denim. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to be around it. I don't want to be in the same room as it. So the whole time he was walking around wearing denim, I was like, dude, change your fucking clothes. I would have been fine with him. He changed his clothes, restructured, he got an attitude, he became a little bit more interesting, but he aligned himself with the bloodline, and I hate the bloodline. So, I have yet to forgive him for that, because one, he wasn't successful in toppling the bloodline, which I know isn't his fault, but still, I'm looking at wrestlers as characters, I have to make that clear, not the actors who play the wrestlers or the performers. And number one is Roman Reigns. Again, I don't hate Roman Reigns, the man who dresses up on Friday Night SmackDown and goes out with Paul Heyman and acknowledge me. I don't hate the guy. I hate the character he plays. But I hate Roman Reigns so much that like last year's WrestleMania, when Cody didn't take the belt off of that fucking piece of garbage, I stopped watching SmackDown. Point blank, I didn't watch it anymore. I didn't watch Raw anymore. I went cold turkey. And I was determined, I am not watching SmackDown or Raw again until they get that goddamn belt off of Roman Reigns. Fortunately, spoilers, they did that this 2 weeks ago at WrestleMania. Now, they still haven't distanced themselves far enough from the Roman Reigns bloodline era yet for me to be like, alright, I feel safe coming back to the show. But at least I'm like, good, because I fucking hate Roman Reigns. When I hear his music, I turn it off. I'm like, nope. I change the channel, or I mute it and I go play some SimCity or Mario World until he's done fucking yapping his yapper. I fucking hate Roman Reigns. Fucking hate him. The character. I want to be very clear. All of this video and the previous video, I was only talking about the characters, never the performers. If I'm doing a list of top 25 wrestling performers, I'm going to be specific. This person as a performer, this person as blah blah blah. I was mostly talking about the characters. I want to be very clear about that. Because to me, wrestling is a live-action comic book. I don't see a difference between Friday Night SmackDown and The Avengers, the MCU movies. It's the same to me.